Under the leadership of U.S. EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson and Energy Czar Carol Browner, the Obama administration continues to develop an unprecedented amount of draconian environmental regulations that will severely damage America's beleaguered industrial sector. The fact is that the Obama administration and its liberal allies are conducting a full-scale assault on America's energy sector and on our industrial base in the guise of environmental protection. Now, 40 years ago, President Richard Nixon signed into law the two landmark statutes that were designed to reverse decades of environmental damage that built up in the industrialized era. They were the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, and the results were astounding. The amount of particulate matter, that's dust to you and me, and lead in the air quickly decreased almost 100-fold. Concentration of other air pollutants, such as carbon monoxide and ozone, dropped precipitously. Fish returned to waterways that had been horribly polluted just a few years before. Lake Erie rose from the dead to become a sportsman's paradise. But there was an unanticipated consequence. Meeting the requirements of the new legislation required a new kind of support infrastructure, including everything from the Sierra Club lobbyist pushing Congress to pass more and more legislation, to the company that makes state-of-the-art pollution control devices, to the armies of federal, state, and local bureaucrats who make sure that everyone follows the rules. The newly federalized environmental movement became the feeding trough for thousands upon thousands of people and organizations, all with an interest in keeping the money flowing, and each with rapidly growing political influence. And so every administration became anxious to establish its environmental bona fides and trumpet its green triumphs. The EPA, likewise, wants everyone to know that it's using taxpayer dollars wisely and is thoroughly protecting the environment. But nobody is going to declare victory and just go home. No one is going to say, hey, that's clean enough, America. Let's cut back the size of the EPA and the environmental industry and just go into maintenance mode. The EPA is now its own beast with its own agenda. A particular administration may influence how aggressive the EPA is in cracking down on violations of EPA rules, but the agency's rulemaking and standard-setting machinery continues to chug along no matter who's in charge. For years, that machinery generated new standards and rules at a fairly consistent, predictable rate. Then, Barack Obama took the oath of office. Now, under Obama, the craziest tree-hugging inmates of the EPA are now effectively, if not officially, in charge of the asylum. As a result, the EPA has radically changed course. Rather than increasing the regulatory burden and tightening down on standards at a measured pace, whether or not such actions were actually needed, Obama's EPA has shifted the agency into hyperdrive. For example, the EPA has used a combination of targeted regulations, backdoor regulations, and targeted enforcement actions to ensure that the availability of cheap and plentiful coal-fired power will be sharply reduced over the next 20 years. Even as liberals and environmentalists continue to clamor for a carbon tax or a national cap-and-trade scheme, the EPA has already given them what they claim to want. A program that will take tens of thousands of megawatts of coal-fired power off the grid and thus further reduce America's emissions of greenhouse gases. And this huge shift in energy policy was accomplished without Congress having a say in the matter, or apparently even noticing. From fuel economy standards to new rules that cripple manufacturers to a backdoor cap-and-trade program, President Obama's EPA is introducing new regulations at a pace and scope that we have never seen before in virtually every area that the agency touches. They're studying new ways to micromanage America in the name of environmental purity that no nation on earth has ever felt the need to attain before. And their tentacles are reaching out into society and the economy in ways that few people can possibly imagine. We're looking at the tip of a huge iceberg that will affect the American economy for years to come. And, like another famous iceberg, this one has the ability to sink the ship that has been this nation's amazing vessel of prosperity.